In this tutorial, I'd like to show you the best way to prepare your DynaSCAPE drawing in order to export it to Google SketchUp for 3D modeling. The tips and best practice that I'm going to show you here are intended to make this process as quick and efficient as possible. So here's a typical DynaSCAPE drawing that you would use to make a 3D model in Google SketchUp. Before we export this to SketchUp format, I'd like to talk about a number of things. You'll notice that I've used symbols for everything on my drawing, including not just my plants and my rocks, but also furniture, a bench, and a little bistro set here. This is because I can make use of the reload feature in Google SketchUp that allows you to swap your 2D symbols for a 3D model, which makes the process really fast and efficient. So if you've got symbols for everything, it saves you a lot of time, as instead of trying to find it and place it, it'll actually just replace the symbol that you have when you click on the reload option. We're going to talk about it in that tutorial when we go through and make a model. You'll also notice that I haven't grouped my symbols, so all these symbols are ungrouped. So it's best to plan ahead. If you plan to create a 3D model from your design, when you get to the stage where you've got your plant symbols on your drawing, do a save as and save that drawing before you group the symbols, so that you don't have to go back and replace all of your symbols that you've grouped. You also have to have unique symbols. For example, at the top here I've got these three plants. These symbols are exactly the same as these three here. When I go to swap them in Google SketchUp, it will replace all these plants at the exact same time. So if I wanted these to be different from these, I should use a unique symbol for that plant. And the last thing I want to talk about is, you notice that my hedges are not symbols anymore, but they're actually simple shapes. And this is to reduce the number of faces that SketchUp has to render. This just makes it a simpler model for SketchUp. And we have good hedge textures that you can use to make a nice looking hedge in SketchUp, so we don't really need the symbol for that. So the first thing I'm going to do before I export it to SketchUp format is clean it up. And I'm going to start with the cleanup tool that's in the File menu under SketchUp called Cleanup Drawing for Export. When I click on that, it opens up a modifier that has three options in it. One of them is to remove the building layer, one's to remove lines in the color setup layer, and one's to remove the temp layer. Building layer needs to be removed because SketchUp will interpret that thick line that represents your building outline, this thick line here, it'll show it as two thin lines on either side of it. So, and that causes problems and extra cleanup in SketchUp, so let's just remove it. Also, the lines in the color setup layer are generally on top of other lines in your drawing, which also can cause problems in SketchUp, so we're going to remove all the lines in the color setup layer, and we're also going to remove the temp lines. The temp lines generally are lines that you put on your drawing for helping you create your design, and you don't need those anymore, so we're going to remove those all in one step. When I click Start, it's going to force me to save a new drawing, or save this drawing as a new drawing, so that I don't overwrite the original. I'm going to give this a new name by adding 3D to the name. Click Save. Now it tells me that I should, before I export to SketchUp, I should manually remove text, text with leaders, dimensions, hatch patterns, title blocks, and raster image. These are things that I don't need in SketchUp, so why don't we remove them? So I've got some patterns that I can get rid of here. I've also got things like a title block that I don't need. I've got all this text with leaders. We don't need those in our model, so let's remove them now. What this is going to do is make for less cleanup in SketchUp, and it's also going to make the export to SketchUp go that much faster. So now my drawing is all set up. My building line has been removed, but I've still got that base layer line that came with the building line when I drew the outline of my house using the building outline tool. I've also closed off my side property here, where my side lot went into the backyard, so that this will create a shape or an outline that can be filled with a texture once it's in Google SketchUp. So now I'm going to go to File, I'm going to go back to SketchUp, and this time I'm going to choose Export to SketchUp Format. This is going to export this drawing so that I can open it up in SketchUp. I'm just going to let it save it in the same place. It's going to give it a file extension of SKP, which is the SketchUp format. Then I'm going to click OK. This could take a few minutes The larger your drawing is, the more symbols that you have on your drawing, the longer it's going to take. A really large drawing could take upwards of 10 to 15 minutes, so be patient. It may even appear that DynaSCAPE is not responding, but just let it go. And when it's done, it will tell you, and then it will ask you if you wish to open that drawing in SketchUp. So now the export is complete. It's asking me if I want to open it up in SketchUp. I click yes. And there's my drawing exported to SketchUp format. Now it's inside SketchUp. Now I'm ready to create my model, and we're going to talk about that in the next tutorial.